Shem. Today's Daf Yomi is Chullin Samach Gimel, and this is the Daf Yomi, or the 17th of Tammuz, which is a fast day, which we started this morning at 4:04 a.m. So we're going to start on top of 63a, 5 lines from the top. Amarab Yehuda, and the Gemara is continuing to discuss the different fish that are non-kosher and looking for laws and meanings within them. So the shlach, usually translated as the seagull, its name shlach comes from the fish that draws up from the bird that draws up fish from the sea. Duchifat, the duchifat, which is usually translated as the hoopoe bird, which is the national bird of Israel, it's known for its beautiful crest. Shahodo kafut, its crest, its beauty is bound up. It's usually tied up. And Tanya releases it on occasions. Tanya nami hachi duchifat shahodo kafut. And Hevi, this is the one that brought the Shamir or Beis Hamikdash. This is the one that brought the Shamir. And Shamir is a worm which was used to cut stones for the Beis Hamikdash for Shlomo Melech. He needed it. And Duchifat was in charge of it. And Shlomo Melech tricked the Duchifat. And the Gemara told the story in Gittin 68. And that's how he was able to finally bring the Shamir to the temple. Rabbi Yochanan ki avichadi shlach, and Rabbi Yochanan would see this seagull, Amar the shlach, Amar mishpatecha tahom rabbah. He would say, Hashem, your judgment goes into the depths, because the fish would dive into the water, and the bird would dive into the water and take a fish, which means to say that God's judgments even went down beneath the sea. Ki avichazi nemoa, when Rabbi Yochanan would see an ant, Amar tzikascha kahare el, your righteousness are like the mountains of God, that even an ant has life, just like a mountain, so too an ant has life. I mean, to say that even a small creature, Hashem worries about it and provides for it. Amar Meimer, Likni uvitni Sharyan. The birds, the Likni and the Bitni birds are permitted. Shaknai uvatnai, the Shaknai and the Batnai birds, the Malcolm Shanagu Achol, and place where you have the practice to eat them, the custom to eat them, ochlin, then you could eat them. Malkum shenagu shalolachol, place where there's a custom not to eat them, ain't ochlin, you can't eat them. I asked the Gemara the obvious question: is kosher or non-kosher dependent upon a custom? Atubim and haga talyam nelsa. Does kosher non-kosher depend upon a custom? The Gemara says it does. In v'lo kasha, haba asrai said the shlichi paras vazniya, haba asra delo shlichi paras vazniya. The parrots and the aznia, we said yesterday, were birds that have one kosher siman, but they're not kosher to eat, even though they have one sign that's kosher. So if there's a place that the parrots and the aznia there are in that place, it's different than if there's not there. So you could look at it either way. Either in that place we have to be careful for the parrots and aznia, or in that place we know what the parrots and the aznia is, and therefore we know that the other bird is not it. You can read it either way, but anyway, it depends on the local custom if they're aware. Amar Abaye kui v'kukukai asiri. Those two birds are prohibited. Ka'akasa sharia. The ka'akasa bird is permitted. However, b'ma'arava in Eretz Yisrael, they didn't agree with that. Moki olayu. They used to give lashes if you eat the kakusa, the karoe tachvasa. They called it tachvasa bird. Tan Rabbanan. Tinshemes, the Tinshemes bird is Ba'usheba Ophos. It is the lowest of the birds. The Tinshemes is listed in the Torah as a non-kosher bird, and also as one of the non-kosher shiratzim, one of the non-kosher rodent. So it means two different things depending on the context. So it's the Ba'usheba Ophos. Rashi says it's something that shrieks at night, a bird that shrieks at night like an owl. Atomer Ba'usheba Ophos, so you know, Ba'usheba shiratzim. Maybe it's one of the rodents. Amris, no. Go derive it from the context, from one of the 13 midos that the Torah has learned. One of them is you have to look at the context. And here in this case, what's the Torah referring to when it says Tinshemes? Ba'opos, it's referring to birds. Avkam ba'opos. Also, Tinshemes here is a bird. But it also is It also says in Tinshemes by the prohibited rodents. Ki agavna Tinshemes ba'u shebashratim. It's the worst of the shratim. Maybe it's the worst of the birds. Amar man miyugim omido shator and derive it from the 13 attributes of the Torah. Something that's derived from it. But the Torah is referring to shratim. Avkan b'shratim. And Amar Abai, what is it? Bosha ba'ofo says Abai, the boast of the birds is the kipuf, is the kipuf. What is the kipuf? Rashi says over here, this is sight. Linear Ashakorim kalva, shvart, or shurit, shadoma, like talfa shabashratim. Anyway, Rashi, maybe it's the bat, we don't know. But uh, and Boas of Shratim Korpudai. And the Boas of the Shratim is the Korpudai, which is the Talpa, which is like usually translated as a mole. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, Kaas, Zu a cook. The Kaas bird is the cook bird, and Racham, Zu Shirakrak. The Racham is the Shirakrak bird. It's Anamanapia, it shrieks. I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Lamanik Rashma Racham. Why is it called the Racham? Kivin Sheba, when this bird comes, Kivin Sheba Racham, when the Racham bird comes, Bo Rachamim La'olam. Rachamim, which is rain. Rashi says, compassion comes to the world. Amar Bibi Barabaya Behudi Yosef Amidi, that's when he sits on a platform of Avet Shirakrok and he screeches. Ugamiri the Yosef Ara, but it's a tradition that if he sits on the ground, Visharak and shrieks, also Mashiach, then the Messiah will come. And it says, Ashrakahu Ahem Akabtim, I'll whistle for them and I'll gather them in. What's the connection between this bird sitting on the ground, Mashiach coming? To remind us, Ben Yoyada says of two things. First of all, that Mashiach will come when we humble ourselves. And two, when we're at our lowest point, when the bird is on the ground, and when we are in the dirt, that's when the Mashiach will come. There was once this bird that was sitting in the field, Ushrak, and it was screeching, and a stone came and and killed it. That bird was a liar, and so therefore it got cut down. So now we say Tanarabanan Orev, when it says in the Torah the raven, the Orev. This refers to the Orev. As Ko Orev, every Orev, the Orev Ha'amaki, to include the Orev Ha'amaki. We'll see what that is. Let me know. According to its type. The Orev Abba Roshe Yonim. This includes the Orev that comes at the head in front of the doves. So let's analyze this. Bryce, Amar Orev is the Orev, and Orev is an Orev. Atu Kaman Kai, you think this Orev is in front of us? Now we can say that that's an Orev. We don't have an Orev in front of us. Ela Ema, Orev is the Orev Uchma. When it says an Orev, that refers to a black raven. L'cheinu Omer, Kavutzo Sav, Taltalim Shechoros, Ka'ore, Kavutzo Sav, Taltalim Shechoros Ka'orev. Its curls are black curls like a raven. Hamaki, when it says ko orev to include the orev hamaki, this is the chivra, this is the white raven. There are white ravens, but it's only one out of every 30,000 ravens is white as a genetic mutation. We see that amok minaor is lighter than the shade. Like the appearance of the sun, which is depressed from the shade. And it says, let me know, comes to include the orev that comes in front of the pigeons. And we don't say it comes in front of the pigeons, but rather its head is similar to the pigeon's head. I'm not sure what that means, but that's what the Gemara says. There are certain birds that can make themselves look like pigeons. The nates is usually translated as a hawk. It doesn't tell that the nates is prohibited. Lavi, and when it says the nates lamineo, it says nates, that refers to the nates lamineo. When it says its type, Lavi is parachiria. What is it parachiria? Amarbaya shirinka. It's a shirinka bird. Okay, whatever that is. Amarav Yehuda chasida. Chasida is usually translated as a crow. Zu Dailavana. That's the Dailavana. Lama nikra shema chasida. Why is it called a chasida bird? She'ose chasidus im chavruseha. Because it always does kindness with its friends. So why is it non-kosher if it's a kind bird? So the Ger Rebbe says, because with its friends it does kindness, but with others it doesn't do. He only does kindness with its friends, and that's not a blessing. To only do kindness with your friends is not a bracha. Hanafa zu daya ragzanis. Now nafa is called the daya ragzanis. Lama nikra shmo hanafa. Why is it called hanafa? Shemina efesim chavroseh. It fights with its friends. Okay. So now we have an issue. Then the laws of the birds are said in two places. They're said in Parsha Shmini, which is in Vayikra, and Parsha Re'eh in Devarim. And in Parsha Vayikra, it says Ada'ah v'sayah lemina. So it says the da'ah and the ayah according to its type. But in Re'eh, it writes not the da'ah and the ayah, but it says the ra'ah and the ayah and the dayah. It says it's so in Parashas Re'eh, it says all three: Hara'ah, Ve'esayah, V'hadayah, Lamina. So why in Parashas Shmini does it not say Ra'ah, and why are they repeated in Re'eh? So that's the basic question. So we're going to get into now. Amar Rav Chanan, Bar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Chanan, Brei de Rava. He says the following: Amar Rav, Esrim ve'arba ofos tmeinin. There are 24 non-kosher birds. Armole Rav Chanan bar Rav Chisda dehecha. Where did he get 24? Ida vayikra Esrim avu in Parshas Shmini. There's only 20, and Ida Mishnah Torah. If in Parshas Re'eh Esrim v'chad avu, there's 21 because they have the Ra'ah, which is not listed in Parshas Shmini. So and if you want to say that the Daya is written in Vayikra and it's not written in Re'eh, so if that's the case, and therefore add to it, so add to the one that's not listed, if you want to say that that's what we should be doing. So if that's the case, Shadi Alayo, if you want to add to it, Akati Esrin Vitrina Havu. We still that only gets us to 22. So Amrulay, so Rav Chisda says to his son, Rav Chanan, Hachi Amravua da Imach Mishmid Rav. This is what your maternal grandfather said in the name of Rav. Let me know. Since it says let me know 4 times, it says that according to its type. So therefore we have 4 more. So that's how we get. But it's Gemara says that takes us 26. Amrabai da'a v'ra'ah achasi. When it says da'a in Shmini, and when it says ra'ah in Re'eh, that's one bird. They're the same. Because if you want to say there's 2 separate birds, on top of Samach Gimel and Beis, Michte Mishnei Torah Sufei Huda. So since the Sefer Devarim is coming to add on and to clarify, Ma'ishna Hacha Dechsev Da'a, U'Ma'ishna Hacha Dechsev Ra'ah. And why in Mishneh Torah does it say Ra'ah? V'Oksev Da'a. Min Ra'ah v'Da'a Achasi. It teaches us that the Ra'ah and the Da'a are the same bird. Right? But still, that only gets us down to 25. Akati Chapei Happen. It's only 25. I'm Rabbi Kishem Sharavada Achasi, Kachayavadaya Achasi. Also, the ayah, which is mentioned in Shmini, and the daya, which is mentioned in Devarim, are also the same. So we could take out another one. So these are the Tartin, and if you want to say there too, since Devarim is coming to add and clarify, ayah. So ayah and daya are one. So that's how we have 24. But if that's the case, why does it have to write them both and write them separately? So the Gemara explains, Tanya Rabbi Omer Ekra Ani Ayah Daya. I call it an ayah. Why is it called a daya in Parashas Re'eh? Amar Kadesh Lo Titem Petron Pel Baldin Lachok Shlo Teya Takoraya Vukorayada Takoraya Vukoraya Akach Kasav Mishmei Torah V'Arav Esaya V'Adaya Lamina. So because people call it different things, we don't want somebody walking around saying no, this is the kosher bird. So that's why the Torah writes it different ways to demonstrate it's not kosher, even though people call it different things. Meisvei Lama Nishnu Bebehema. So the Gemara cites a brayso to challenge this, and the brayso says, why is it Lama Nishnu Bebehema? Why are the non-kosher animals repeated in Devarim? Because the shesua is a bird. It's an animal that even though it chews its cud and has split hooves and it's a double back, it's still not kosher. Ubaofos And in birds, it's repeated ra'ah because the ra'ah is not mentioned in Shmini, but it is mentioned in Devarim. Ma'alav midibehema the hasam sufe ofos nami sufe. Just like so, don't we want to say just like Parsha Shmini is adding it on? That it's added on the Shesua and Re'eh from Shmini. Also, this Ra'ah is a different bird, and it's not the same bird. The Gemara says, no, Hasam Wasufle, by the Shesua is to add on a Hachal Rushe. But here, by the Ra'ah, it's basically going to be the same exact bird. So here it's explaining it. This idea that Rav said that there are 24 non-kosher birds. So this idea that there are not 24 non-kosher birds, this is not the same position as Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo, we'll see, he's going to say that there are 23. Rabbi Avo, Ra'ah, Zu Ayah. The Ra'ah is not the same. It's the Ayah. Why is it called the Ra'ah? Sharo Bioser is the best eyesight. Maybe the eagle. So if that's the case, Ayah, what's the ayah? Tanan omedes bebavel, ayin ayah. Tana, it's able to stand. Omedes bebavel, it's able to stand in Babylon. It's able to stand in Babylon. Omedes bebavel. Veroa nevela beretz Shalom. It's able to see a carcass in the land of Israel. Midira'ah, so the Gemara asks the question, Midira'ah, hainu ayah, from the fact that Rabbi Avo says that the bird that is called the Ra'ah is the ayah. Now we're going to see how we get to Rabbi Avo gets to 23. We call the Da'ah, hainu Ra'ah. This implies that the bird that's called the Da'ah is not the Ra'ah because there are 24 non-kosher birds. And if the Da'ah is the Ra'ah and the Ra'ah is the ayah, then they're all the same. And so then there would be 23. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a proof. Since Mishnah Torah is adding on, why is it only saying one place? So it teaches us that the Ra and the Da and the Ra are one bird, and it has three names. And so they're all the same bird. So the Gemara says, from the fact that Rabbi Avo says that the Ra is the Ayah, it implies that the bird that's called the Daya is an additional one. The Gemara says, no, that's not the proof. So why in Shemini does it say Ayah on the Ayah? And why in Re'eh does it say Lumineo on the Daya? Oh, Shmamina, Da, Vera, Daya, V'aya, Achasi. They're all the same. And so therefore, that's how we get to 23 birds. Tanya, Isi ben Yehuda, Omer, Mea Opos Tmei and Yeshua Mizrach. Isi ben Yehuda says there were 100 non-kosher birds in the east, V'kuan min Ayahim, but they're all basically in the same family as the Ayah, so they're all called the Ayah. Tana Vimi Breder Bevo Zayim Meos Mini Dug. I mean, there are 700 types of fish. Fachas Meos Mini Chagavim, and there are 800 types of locusts, Ua Ophos in Mispar, and there's no limit to the number of birds because there's so many types of birds. So then the Gemara says, Tanya. And then we say Ophos Esrim Arba Havu, but the Ophos that are non-kosher are 24. So how can we say they're unlimited? Elo Ophos Tahorim Amos birds. So the kosher birds, there's no number. Tanya Nami Tanya Reb, that means unlimited. Tanya Rebbe Omer, go Aviadu if name Misha Amar Vayoam. It's revealed before God. Shebehema Tmea Meruba Menateris. God knew that there are many more non-kosher animals than kosher animals. Tikach Mana Kasav B'Tahor, therefore God listed the kosher animals just because there are much less of them. And God knew that there are many more kosher birds than non-kosher. Therefore, the Torah lists the non-kosher birds. What's this teaching us? Why are you telling us this statement? Why is Rebbe giving us this brisa? That person should always teach his students in the shortest way possible. A kosher bird you can eat only if you have a tradition. Nemanat Sayed, the hunter is believed, Lomar Ovzatar, that this bird is kosher. Maser Li Rebbe, that my teacher taught me that this bird is kosher. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan, that's only if the hunter is an expert in them and their names. By Rabbi Zera, Rabu Chacham, or Rabbi Tzait. Who taught him that this bird is kosher? Is Rebbe who's a Torah scholar, or is Rebbe who's a trapper, a hunter? Rabbi Yochanan said he's an expert in their names. Now, if he says his Rebbe is an expert hunter, shopper, makes sense. If he says his Rebbe is a Torah scholar, okay, he knows their names. How can he identify them? As we see from our daf, that very, very hard to identify what these birds are unless you're a bird expert. He learns it from his teacher, who's a hunter. Shema Mina. Okay, this is a beautiful daf that we did today for the 17th of Tammuz, and Baruch Hashem will daven Shachris now.